Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, Senior Writing Coach with Defend and Publish. Welcome to episode 37, Brain Dump on Post-its. So I had a breakthrough on Sunday, and we always record these episodes on Monday. So I wanted to make sure that I use this episode to share this breakthrough about how I found a kind of an inventive way, I think, to use Post-its to manage a bunch of projects that are floating around in my head. So for some context, and then I'm going to show some pictures. So context is that in September and October of the time that I'm recording this podcast, so this would be in the fall of 2021, I realized from looking at my calendar in the next 8 to 10 weeks, I know I have 5 different presentations and 2 scholarly writing projects. And some of this I brought on myself because I decided to pick up some extra, workshops and talks, and I love doing them. So I'm very happy about doing them. So I'm invested and I'm just, thrilled. But it does require some time. And also with the 2 writing projects, those are also projects that I want to work on. And I know that it's a little unrealistic to expect that I'll be able to manage all this in 10 weeks, but I'm hoping for the best. And what has resulted, and I think this happens to academics a lot once we start picking up more than 3 things we're trying to work on at a time, is that maybe even fewer than that for some people, our projects tend to get sort of muddled together in our heads. And so I know on one project, I think I want a group activity. Another project, I might know, I still have to work in those 2 sources. And a third project, I might already be mentally rewriting how my introduction sounds. A fourth project, I know there's an area for revision, and I've got 3 ideas about that. And a lot of us are carrying this academic baggage for all of our projects in our brains rather than tracking it somewhere. And I've tried to do a reasonably good job of keeping a writing project chart and keeping ideas about where I am on each project. But I find that doesn't really help during times when you have some thinking time. So for example, when I was pumping gas the other day, I had a great idea and wrote it down on a receipt. We don't really have a way to mentally capture all that our brain is doing when we're not sitting down at the computer and typing in these different notes on different projects. And so I do sometimes keep them on my phone and do things like that. But I just randomly came across a strategy that seemed to work for me very well to feel like I was getting myself organized for the week. And it was this. I had stopped up in one of our upstairs bathrooms to I think I was putting towels away or something like that. I don't remember. But I had a pack of Post-its in my pocket because they were laying on the floor from one of my kids. And I was going to go, throw them back in our kitchen in the big pile of where Post-its live. And I had them in my pocket. I also had like a kid's crayon and some other stuff that I had found on the floor in my other pocket. And I was putting these towels away. And I had, sort of 3 ideas at one time while I was sort of like rearranging what was happening in our linen closet, because I opened it and a bunch of stuff fell on me. And, I just stopped right then and there. I just had the Post-its. So this is certainly like, not that I'm recommending everybody carry Post-its around, but they were very handy in this particular instance. And I basically sat down on the floor in there and just started writing out all the ideas I knew that had been sort of floating around in my head all day while I was doing, kind of tackling some household, projects. And what I'm going to show you in a screenshot is how I managed to write out a bunch of things for these projects, and then how I actually managed to capture them in some way. So I've kind of had an ongoing theme in this podcast of how to capture projects in a way that you have this great thought and you don't want to let it get away, and you want to make sure that great thought eventually makes it into the publication or the presentation or whatever it is that you're doing. So I'm going to share a screen so you can see how this actually worked out for me last night when I was working on doing this. So hang on one second. Okay. So for those of you that are audio listeners, I'll describe what the pictures look like on the screen. It's just a quick slideshow of a few pictures of how the system worked out for me. You can check them out in the show notes. So what folks that are watching this on a video are looking at is my bathroom floor with a bunch of Post-its and a couple of arrows. And what I ended up doing, I just sat on the floor and then wrote out notes for these three different, in this case, it turned out to be three different presentations I'm simultaneously working on. And so I have a Post-it for each of the projects where I started writing some notes. And then in the case of one of the projects, I had so many notes, I needed more than one Post-it. So I just kind of grouped them together. The other thing that happened, just because of this experience, I even wrote a Post-it for this episode because this was the new idea that popped up from dumping out all the other stuff in my head. And I really like the idea of using the Post-its to do this. And also, I really like the idea of if you're physically able to do this. I know some of us have physical different challenges with this, but you're able to find a spot like a table or a floor versus maybe sticking these up on a wall or a bulletin board, because it allowed me to kind of stay there, move things around a little bit and not worry about making things stick to the wall. I wasn't worried about gravity, like dropping Post-its down on the floor. I could just stay there. And, you know, another thing for busy academics, sometimes the restroom is the only space you have that's private. So I wasn't worried about kids interrupting me at that particular moment. But for anyone, if you need to have some thinking time, there's another benefit to doing in this spot. Just lock the door and then stay in there and make your, make your map. And then, of course, take a picture of it or collect your Post-its. But this did not take me very long. I basically took, I would estimate between 10 and 15 minutes where I just wrote out everything in my head I knew that I was kind of carrying around with me all day about different projects. And these notes aren't going to make a whole lot of sense to other people, but one project that's over in the corner to the left is for a talk that I'm giving at the University of Leeds. And I knew in that case, I wanted to divide that talk up into a couple of different parts. And then I had a lot of different things or different arguments I wanted to make. And so that's what those two Post-its are on the screen. A project at the top, I just had a couple of notes about things that I know need to go into that particular talk, and they were more like strategies. And then there's a project on the side, on the right-hand side, is a talk that I'm giving for University of Illinois Chicago about some different, this was also about different strategies. And where I was getting messed up was that my project 2 and project 3, the two talks about strategies, there's one or two strategies that are the same that I'm talking about, but the rest of them are different. And I find that this happens in my writing too. So in the case of this, the way that I worked it out this time where I was doing these Post-its, this could have been the same with 3 different writing projects. It's all the same, where some of your content may overlap, or you might be using the same source in 2 different projects, and then the projects become sort of muddled. I found, especially with coaching at Defend and Publish, that this happens a lot with dissertation writers that are trying to carve up their dissertation into a bunch of articles, because there's a few pieces that will remain the same, but other things are going to be new or moved around. And so what's viewed on the screen, of course, shows these 3 sort of groupings of projects, plus the 4th bonus Post-it for the new idea that popped up for this episode. And what I'm showing next is what these Post-its look like, just one grouping of them up close. So what's on the screen right now is my talk for the University of Leeds, which is in the middle of September, knowing I want these 3 groupings of possibly about benefits. This is a talk on collaboration, about people and processes, and then some different strategies that I recommend. So like one of them I always recommend is assigning a project manager. And I will do a series on collaboration coming up on this podcast. So we'll do, like a 3 or 4 episode series on that. So I'll share some of those strategies there. This talk is specifically about collaborating in the humanities. So whatever we do for Defend and Publish, I'll make it something that's more applicable for lots of disciplines. But in this case, this is what the notes kind of look like up close. So they're not neat. You can see I just scribbled them out really fast. One of my notes that isn't in the picture is one with crayon, but it was really difficult to read, so I didn't put that one on the screen because I told you I had a crayon in my pocket and some other things I just randomly picked up off the floor. So this is what one of those Post-its looked like. And then I want to share with you how I ended up capturing these. So what I did was I first took a picture of all the Post-its all grouped, the same picture I just showed you now on screen. So I could see the 3 little clusters of Post-its. And then what I did with them is I brought those 3 clusters downstairs. I had my laptop open, and then I just opened up 3 different slide decks for those 3 projects. I would do the same thing if this was 3 writing projects. I would open up 3 different Microsoft Word documents if I hadn't started any of them, and dumped the ideas into those projects. So for this case, the talk that I'm doing for the University of Illinois at Chicago is about flexible writing strategies during the pandemic, especially when you're combining that with caregiving. And so here I just had just a quick list of topics I know I need to cover. So the slide deck, I just opened it up, dropped some ideas in. I didn't worry about the design of the deck or making the title right or anything like that. I just made sure that I saved it in a way that I know that this is the deck for this project. For another set of the notes, this one for the collaboration in the humanities, I just made sure that I just picked a different design. I didn't care which design it was I was using PowerPoint. I didn't care what design it was. I just wanted to make sure it was different from the other one. So visually, I'm already starting to separate these projects. And then this one, I definitely had more notes. So I spent more time making slides. And you can see that in the picture. You can see I've made a couple of slides. I have more Post-its I need to drop in there. And so this is the other deck. And I did the same thing with the third project, which I'm not showing on there. So what this helped me do is not just think about the ideas, write down the ideas in the moment, or if I wanted to put them on a project tracking chart, but then actually start the process of capture of loading these into the different slide decks. And so one of the things that happens as a result of working in this way is I know I've got a head start on some of these different projects, which always feels good. But the other thing about it is now I have a system that even though I'm not actively working on a project, even some passive thinking about a project, if I just take a few minutes to write something on a Post-it and then take the time to put it in, I think that this will help me actually be a little bit more systematic about getting these projects completed, but I'll still be able to use my brain and be able to think about how these projects are going to shape out in a more relaxed way that's not maybe as linear as sitting down to work on a specific presentation. At some time, I will have to do that. I will have to sit down and finish these slides and be ready for that talk, and I will. But the active capture and making sure that I'm getting all those little great ideas that we all have when we're driving or we're walking or exercising, this is just another way that the Post-its really worked for me in this manner, because I could kind of get out all the ideas, figure out what project does that idea go with. I have this great idea about maybe a technology tool I want to use. I just know one of these projects needs that tool. I could write that out on a Post-it and think about it for a little bit and be like, oh, it goes with this project, and then move it over there. So Post-its were very movable for that. And then I also wanted to show what happened for the rest of the capture. So it's not enough for me to make the slide decks, to brain dump everything out onto the Post-its, sort all the Post-its out, dump them into the specific projects in terms of slides, or if I was going to do 3 writing projects or 4 writing projects, different documents. But then the next part is, where are all these projects going to live? And so I talked about this in episode 28 about organizing your desktop for academic productivity. And I mentioned that at the moment, and of course, apps change all the time. We don't recommend a specific app all the time or promote a specific one. I think there's lots of different ones you could use. But in episode 28, I talked about how I tried using an app called Fences that just makes little boxes around sections of your desktop. And I mentioned in that episode that I have a section for current academic projects. So in the case of those slides I made for the University of Leeds, I wanted to make sure that I put those in the Leeds Fall 2021 talk folder. That's what I just happened to name that folder. So my slides are in there, but also other parts of that project, like some notes from a conversation I had with the planners about what they want from that talk, and a questionnaire that participants received are in there. And you can see that the slides for UIC, I have not yet made a folder, but I did save those slides in that current academic projects box on my desktop, so I at least know where those are. And this would be the same with academic writing projects. I might have several folders for different writing projects that I'm working on. So on my desktop, even though this particular example was not about my book, the next book I'm coming out with is called Rec Comp Moms, and there's a folder for that. So that project is still an active project as well. So I also want to make a note. Just fences is one of those things, but there's lots of other things that we'll talk about in it. But I also want to note we're recording this episode in September of 2021, and I also want to encourage folks to register for our upcoming webinar, or I'm sorry, our upcoming workshop on writing project management. This will cover organizational strategies, technology tools, and systems for completing multiple writing projects. Certainly, I'll talk a little bit more about fences, but some other tools as well, and different strategies in addition to the technology. This is on Wednesday, September 29th from 12 to 3 p.m. in Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to sign up for this workshop, we'd love to have you. We had a lot of folks come to our July workshop. And the way to sign up is to go to defendandpublish.com. Just scroll down a little bit and there'll be a registration button for that. And all of our workshops at the moment are running at $50 for the workshop plus a processing fee on Eventbrite. But in general, they're pretty low cost faculty development activities. So this is a great way to use faculty development funds if you have those, if you're fortunate enough to be in a faculty position where you have those, but also for graduate students and for independent academics, the price is pretty low for all the tools and templates that you get. So our spaces go pretty fast. We encourage everybody to sign up since we can only have 100 participants in the workshop. And it's pretty active. So if you're interested in doing that with us, this is not one of those sit through 3 hours of lecture type of workshops. We do a lot of talking to each other. We do a lot of interaction. And then, of course, you get those free templates and things to develop to help you move on your way with organizing all of your writing projects. So if you want to join, go to defendandpublish.com and sign up and grab one of those spots. And then also, if you are unable to make it, and I know that we reach people now all over the world and in different time zones, you are able to register and then email me to request a recording. So if you're interested in getting a recording, you can email me, Christine, at defendandpublish.com and get your recording that way. So hopefully we'll see you there, and happy writing this week.